right, Tyler. We should be live. There it is, just
We
popped
are
up. So
live.
whenever you're ready, bud.
Okay. Four, three, one. You are listening to a special presentation of Know the Score. I'm your co host, Tyler Ball. You can find me on Twitter at TABALL1. And I'm here with my co host, Don Delarente. Twitter, Don Delarente. And of course, you can always contact us through the KTS pod on Twitter via KTSPOD. All right, we're here because uh, there was an incredible week of sports on field and off the field. And tonight we're going to cover what happened off the fields. Uh, we will actually have our regular show will air on Thursday. Well, likely Friday. We'll record on Thursday, but tonight we're going to discuss just the things that went on um, as far as the statements made by the president and the sports world's reaction to those statements. Uh, we're going to start first with just the mood right now and the effect of what happened as you have our president Donald Trump taking on the National Football League and players that have been demonstrating and protesting via kneeling. Um, actually, President Trump was at a rally in Alabama. Ironically, a team that does not have, well, a city that doesn't have, a state that doesn't have a professional football team. And he essentially calls out uh, a player that takes a knee to protest anything. He specifically meant it towards the flag, and we can get into that obviously. But he actually called any player who does that an SOB, and an owner should be willing to fire him on the spot. See, that drew an enormous amount of applause, and several exceptions were taken to it. Um, in addition, he went and officially disinvited Steph Curry, obviously the superstar guard for the Golden State Warriors, who expressed a little bit of course with his teammates about going to the White House in February when they make their visit to Washington to play the Wizards. Uh, Actually jumped the gun and went ahead before the team was able to meet. He just basically said that because Curry is hesitating on the invite, they're not welcome. Reaction from several players. So Don, introed Trump's statements. What's your take on just everything? I mean, just a general take on just Trump taking on.
My first thought is somebody needs to tell him to stick to politics, and you know what I'm saying. Don't be dragging sports into his politics, which is obviously what he did. Um, Even though he, didn't name out any players specifically. Of course, he's referring to the black players who are taking a stance and doing the protesting. And so, of course, in a place like Alabama in front of his base, that plays well. Um, just totally out of left field, off the cuff, out of nowhere. This was a political rally to try to get a gentleman elected who's in a runoff campaign. So, I don't even know why the NFL would even pop into his mind at that type of function. Um, the just the firestorm. I saw it really late on Friday night and was kind of like, I don't know where that's coming from, but that's interesting. And then on Saturday morning, it was just full blown, just all over everywhere and everything, and everybody was chiming in and weighing in. I mean, that was probably one of the most spectacular days on Twitter there's ever been,
Mm-hmm.
as far as just hearing from all these different athletes and celebrity and coaches and front office people, and it's just something you've never seen, as far as just a polarizing statement from a politician about athletics like that. I mean, it galvanized a whole bunch of people. Um, in favor of the, NFL players. Now, of course, the language that is being used not only by Trump and by the media is definitely loaded and misleading and misinforming, and I'm sure
Oh
we'll
my
definitely
gosh.
we'll definitely
Um,
dive into that a little bit more. But I just don't like the way the NFL kind of handled it. I understand that I knew they were going to do something, and they tried to kind of coordinate themselves in a manner as a league. They only had probably about maybe 36 hours to try to figure out as a league and as a players association kind of what they wanted to do, and they kind of left it up to each individual franchise and owner to kind of come up with and team to kind of decide what they wanted to do. So, and even that was disjointed and bungled and fumbled and not done in a manner that as uniform as I'm pretty sure they thought, or they would like it to have been. So, it's just an extraordinary day. Yesterday or Sunday was an extraordinary day. Like I said, all day on Saturday on Twitter and social media was an extraordinary day. I mean, these are just, we've never seen a president dip his toe this far into an athletic, uh, anything in athletics, as far as dictating and suggesting that owners, fire players for expressing their rights that are guaranteed to them underneath the Constitution and are represented by the symbol of the flag.
and he even, and let's not forget, he even decried the targeting rule. Um, the uh, the 15-yard penalty for targeting and hits to the head. Uh, so even still, you have a sitting president commenting on rules of the game. We haven't had a president direct stance on an opinion probably since steroids. President Obama stated his love for sports, but as far as rules of the game, he was very careful in not willing to suggest uh, or state his opinion on rules per se. It's very very sensitive, very sensitive situation, and I am with you that the NFL dropped the ball, so to speak, on this. I did like the Players Association's statement. I actually enjoyed that. They put about a 3.5 minute film clip on Twitter, standing up and being defiant. I don't mind that, but it also contributes to a emphasizing and cloud narrative that what Colin Kaepernick took a knee for anymore.
Uh,
I already see verified Twitter accounts saying that taking a knee will now be Trump resistance. That's clearly not what the original person. Was honored by Time Magazine for being influential. Uh, that was not what he stood for, and now the message is Colin Kaepernick to a mere martyr who still is not employed by the NFL. Now, let's take it a step further with Colin. Um, Sports Illustrated now has already put out its cover. Uh, as you can see, you will see several athletes: Michael Bennett, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, uh, several others. Posture, obviously done by Photoshop. But here's the issue I have with that: Roger Goodell's on the cover, locked on with Stephen Curry. There is no mention of Colin Kaepernick. Cover.
Well, here's Tyler. Here's kind of where I'm at right now after 3 days of this and kind of seeing it grow its own legs and become something much bigger. It seems like it's two different things going on. The NFL used a lot the word unity in just about every team that released a statement, that made a statement. Everything came out as we want to show unity. We want to show unity. We want to bring ourselves together and show unity. To me, Sunday was just a single day where the whole NFL just said, hey, we're not going to let you tell us what to do, and we going to act opposite to what your statement was. So the unity.
Agree.
So the unity.
Specifically Jerry Jones.
Right. So the unity of it was the owners who, are billionaires who said, hey, we're not going to get pushed around. We're not going to be told what we need to do to these players who, generate our money and are the, reasons that we're well known and stuff. So it was a brushback to his, hey, this is what you need to do to these people who are out of line. And so I feel like the NFL just took Sunday to kind of show up Trump in a way to say, hey, look, our whole league is against what you said, from the owners to the players to the front office people, only because you're trying to use your pulpit to force us to do something, and we don't have to. That's a totally different message than what the original intent of what Kaepernick was doing. Jeremy Lane, Mike Bennett, those first handful of guys, 6, 8, 10 guys that were doing it. Chris Long was one of the guys, with his teammates in Philadelphia. We've got two different quote unquote protests going on. We got just the protest of Donald Trump and his language against the NFL that brought all those different owners together to say, oh, we got to do something. And oh, now I guess it would be a good time to let our players demonstrate this, versus the whole original reason that this started and what the message should be, and where the media is at fault with how they cover the kneeling. My thing is the rhetoric. It's the same way that the Republicans used Obamacare to sully up Affordable Care Act. Now, if the news would have been responsible and referred to it as the Affordable Care Act every time that it was talked about, then the people, when it got taken away from them, or when the vote came down to take it away from them, might not have been so blindsided, but they only knew what the media was calling it as Obamacare. So it eventually grew a stigma on it for people who didn't like Obama, Republican Party. They could always throw that label on it. Well, the same thing is going on now with the protests. Every time you hear a news outlet talk about the players kneeling, they always say protesting the national anthem or protesting the flag. And that is not true. And the more outlets that would actually say, hey, the NFL players taking a knee protesting racial injustice, inequality, and oppression, if they would say that every time instead of copping out and saying, oh, it's a national anthem protest, then maybe we could have a clearer light and not so many people up in arms because, of course, it is so sensitive to everybody about the flag and the national anthem and what it means and what it's supposed to mean and what it's supposed to represent. But again, it's a talking point that's being used to comfort people because to think about oppression and racism and police brutality and all the injustices against black men, black women, and other people of color is a difficult thing to do for middle America. You know what I'm saying? That's not something they want to think about or want to
Nope.
actively look at themselves and reflect upon themselves and say, "Hey, we're being complicit and we're being we're letting these actions take place. We're accountable because we're not speaking up and we're trying to speak down upon these people who are. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's no violence. This isn't a Charlottesville situation where people are losing their lives and there's being property damaged and harsh words and harsh feelings. It's a minute and a half of guys saying, "Hey, the country has some things that it
Because
needs
here's
to
some things.
live up to, and we're trying to bring awareness to it through this single action."
It's not even the oh my gosh, it is so frustrating. This is another thing about Twitter too, and other forms of social media. You actually have sons and daughters going up against their parents in discussing how this issue. Um, you have people under various accounts, some hidden clearly to just to troll it, get obtuse tweets out there. But then you have people that are really to the issue, tell them that are have been out and out saying that they're that a knee is not making a protest against the national anthem or the flag. Is to bring attention to the atrocities that are going on in this country, and they can tell them until they're blue in the face, and people refuse to get it. It is sad to see. It's ridiculous. Um
The unfortunate. Oh, go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, I would rather, to be honest, at this point, um I'm already resigned to think that Colin Kaepernick may never get a quarterback job again. I'm resigned to think that, even though we have seen some of the worst quarterbacking already in these first 3 weeks of the season. Um, I'm inclined to think there has to be something very drastic for Colin Kaepernick to play football again, and it's not. It's even bigger than that. That the NFL and the Players Association maybe not necessarily have done it, but there was just so there was just so disjointed. The players taking a knee, the players choosing to stand, the players being vocal about both stances. It wasn't united, and now the media are pushing this as united. That's crazy because it's not true.
Right.
True at all. Look at Pittsburgh, for example, and that's a obvious reference. Uh, Mike Tomlin held the team in the locker room or in the tunnel, but you had Villanueva, their tackle, who's happy to have served 3 tours in Iraq, in front. Outside, he stands outside, not on the field, but he stands outside and salutes the flag. And he's got a photo op, and now his jersey is the number one selling jersey virtually overnight. On top of that, he's now being as billed as a hero for a side that he vocally has said that he doesn't even want to be on.
Right.
He chose to stand outside.
Well, I
And
think.
he even said he threw his own team under the bus unintentionally.
Hmm. Well, the thing about it was, I think kind of Mike Tomlin might have kind of the statement and the act of it was very good. Comes out nice in the media to say, "Hey, my team's not going to even, be on the sideline. We're going, stay in the locker room, or in this case, they were in the tunnel." But I think by him doing what he didn't really get a temperature of his room first. He just kind of
No.
declared, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do." And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the one thing that he might want to go back and kind of, that probably be the one thing that he probably would regret is that they didn't get a bigger dialogue amongst, hey, because Villanueva is such a special case for them. You know what I mean? To
Right.
actually have a player who's served and done. And then, you may have some players who want to kneel, some players who
And
want to lock arms, some
and
players who don't want to go out, some players who
mhm.
just want to stand in the tunnel. So you've got, 4 or 5 different scenarios that, it's 53 guys in there and coaches and stuff. So, it's like 70 people. So everybody's got a different way that they want to do it. They just know that we got to do something. And I think that if he would have maybe taken one more step to just kind of gauge his room, and then they say, okay, as a team, we really got to be down for this. We just can't be mandated by the coach because, again, like you said, then you get a guy like Villanueva who feels like, oh man, a conflict, and then he goes and kind of singles himself out, and now he's regretful because what I'm saying, he said it became about him and not about the team, and it was all supposed to be, here's that word again, unity shown, from the whole organization, from the owner down to the last man on the bench. And by him not doing that, he stepped outside of that uniform, and now he's being singled out. And that's kind of against the whole merit of football. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason why they police the guys, to make sure everybody looks the same. That's why they police the guys that you can't wear colorful socks. You can't wear nothing on your helmet. You can't have extra this or extra that, because football is a game where everybody is supposed to look the same, act the same, be the same. And I think that's kind of what hinders Colin Kaepernick from getting back into the fold, is because now people look at him differently. Oh, he's outside of the uniformity. His hair is too big. His knee taking is drawing too much attention. They want to talk about football is all about, you always hear, we don't want any distractions. This person is a distraction. We can't take on this player because his past, he may be a distraction.
It's a bunch of crap, but
Right. But and you have to remember that this is a whole this is the culture of football from the time you're,
mm-hmm.
10 years old all the way until you retire. And that's the reason I think that the football players themselves have had a difficult time navigating this, because they're taught to not rock the boat. To, hey, this is the program, you go with the program. You don't, if you don't like it, you figure out a way to make it work. If the system doesn't fit you, you figure out a way to make the system fit you. You don't go trying to change the system. And at every turn, people who have been outspoken and who have been a little bit on the quote unquote a distraction, or too vocal, they get them up out of there. And that's what's going to happen to Colin Kaepernick, unfortunately. But hey, the first, like I said in a couple of shows ago, the first person who steps out for change of any sort is usually going to be the person who suffers the biggest consequence, loses the most, takes the biggest hit. for the betterment of everybody that comes after him.
Always.
And so hopefully that will happen for Colin Kaepernick. That, it started up as, hey, you know, protest. How do you do it? What's the correct way to do it? Whatever. And speaking out and singling yourself out. So hopefully that will embolden the next generation of players who come around to say, hey, Colin Kaepernick can do it. I can do it. And I don't have to be afraid to do it and show it and step outside of the uniformity and the, in lockstep that is football as a sports culture. That's the reason why the basketball thing is the exact 180, because basketball is all about being an individual and showing your individual talents and having flair and drawing that attention to yourself. That's the reason why the NBA seems to be more on point and have coaches and front office people and a commissioner that's like, hey, this is about injustice. This is about inequality. Has nothing to do with the flag. If you hear the NBA talk about it, it's on message far more than the NFL.
Let's look at some individual. We've already taken a foot at some individual and team statements, but let's talk about the one that's actually going to have the most impact, and that's last night. Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. Very interesting elements to this. Number one, although they were on the road, and really not, really on the road, but not really, because they were in Arizona. So they played a bunch of Cowboys fans typically buy up the tickets in Arizona because one of the easiest games to get to. So essentially they were in front of they were in front of their home crowd away from home. And Jerry, instead of the players' shoes or doing it on their own, as a team, they decide the anthem is played. Take a knee, Jones included. Then they stand up and take, with their arms locked, they stand for the anthem.
So in turn, they kind of did the two. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They took the knee I know this is a stretch. They took the knee, let's say, for the Colin Kaepernick inequality oppression part, and then they stood up and locked arms and showed the unity to, deface Trump and his comments from Friday. But that's the optimist view of it.
And I'm going to give you the pessimist, or another word, or some say the real view of it. Jerry Jones coming the story is that's what Jerry does. Jerry is now going to be lauded as brilliant because, number one, his team's the only team that did it. Number two, they're the Dallas Cowboys, so it's going to get a bunch of coverage. Number three, it's Jerry, so he's going to be billed as a hero. And number four, the narrative that it continues two narratives. It's going to be now that the team taking a stand, taking a knee, is going to be the whole trend of resistance, but it also supports folks standing and locking arms, which is the weaker version of Colin's protest. So now you've doubled down on the effectiveness of what Colin Kaepernick did, because it's going to be more talk about this stance that the Cowboys took. Mind you, after said to the media that they weren't doing anything. They said, and on top of that, Cowboy statements related to Kaepernick have been on the adversarial side. particularly Des Bryant, who doesn't even want to talk about it. So
Well, I think that
this has a terrible effect, I believe, on what Colin tried to start. I think
right.
it's martyrized Colin, and I think with Sports Illustrated's article tomorrow, I think it's going to even make Kaepernick
Well,
even more of a martyr.
well, it's a beautiful swerve by Trump. I mean, if you just look at it from a, take your feelings out of it and just kind of with the way his, presidency has been going, things going on in the country, North Korea and the rhetoric going back and forth, not being able to pass any legislation concerning healthcare or tax reform or any of that stuff. So, he's been president for like 9 months and nothing's gotten done. Everything's pretty much the same. So he's got to get the hounds off of him. You know what I mean? So what better way than to, oh, I can turn my focus on these rich black athletes and in front of my core base of folks that got me elected, yeah, that's going to play good. So let's get them talking about that and riled up against the athletes that they watch for entertainment, and that's all that they, have to use for them for. They don't care about what happens to them personally outside of, the 60 minutes on the field. And I can use my Twitter account to keep furthering my narrative and pumping out, tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet about, what's going on in this game and that game, all on Sunday. So now people aren't talking about what they should be talking about as when it comes to Trump. They're talking about what the NFL is doing there and how they're reacting to what he said and how now he's taken the take a knee from being the all about Black Lives Matter and injustice and oppression, and now they trying to say, oh, now that's how you resist the administration and show your show your displeasure with the way our country's being run. And that's the reason why I said the way that I'm looking at it is Sunday was just the NFL trying to come together and throw Trump a middle finger. They
Yeah.
never had any intent to honor Colin Kaepernick as far as what the original message is for. All of these demonstrations you
Mm-hmm.
saw all these teams did, it had nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick. It was just the F you to Donald Trump. It was the middle finger to Trump, the owners bucking back and saying, hey, you know what I'm saying? We gave you money to your campaign and for your inauguration and stuff. But you know what I'm saying? We never thought that we get in your crosshairs. We kind of figured that that would make us immune, or give us immunity in some aspects. But now that clearly it's not, then we gonna show you.
And it's funny because on that narrative, uh, you had several people speak to that. One particular supporter was Rex Ryan. He went on public on NFL Countdown. His comments, uh, saying that he was held disappointed. You introduced Trump at a rally. You're a Trump supporter. How do you miss this stuff? How do you miss the things that he said leading up to the campaign, but yet you endorse him? I don't get it. And that's why he was met with the faces that are now memes from Woodson, Moss, especially Randy Moss. They looked at him like, are you out of your mind? How can you miss that? This is what's about our culture, media, and several of the athletes. How are these people that when we're shouting and shouting and shouting about police brutality, injustices, it's not just these superstar I could say it, white celebrities or uh it's the general public that comes out and says that, well, because you make X amount of dollars here, or you're a millionaire, so how are you oppressed? Uh, Worse, we pay your salary. Or Chicago. What's going on in Chicago? I am so sick about the word Chicago that I can't even watch a Cubs game right now because I have to hear the word Chicago. It's ridiculous. And people just have their heads in the sand over this, and it's just not fair.
Well, Tyler, I learned a valuable lesson. I think it was 1990, 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Video came out. Police officers using excessive force, clearly, right there on video. 7 minutes.
Yep.
Come a year later, come to the trial.
Not guilty.
And they said not guilty. And as a 10-year-old
Yep.
child, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, how can that be? It's video. It's not like they didn't see it. It's not like it was a he say, she say scenario. We all saw it. How can they still not be guilty? And my mother just said, Hey, son, things in this country aren't always fair for people like us. And that's kind of never left me as far as when these things happen. It's never fair. It's never been fair for people like us, regardless of
Nope.
what they have on video, what they have on audio. No matter if you have your hands up, if you have your back to people, there is a consensus and a mandate, it seems right now, that hey, we're not convicting no police officers for killing no black person. It's just not gonna happen because it's happened too many times and nobody suffered any consequences from it.
It's the old Chris Berman, once is an accident, two's a trend, and three is a problem. We well past three.
Right.
Age of the game. I mean, heck,
right.
That happened. That was Rodney King, and Rodney King is already, we already 20. We're almost 30 years past Rodney King.
Right.
Almost. So,
and here's the real issue, and it's been the issue at any point. I don't care if you're women, black people, gay people, but especially black people. Everybody has a problem with how you protest. You march in the street, it's a problem. You take a knee, it's a problem. You scream and yell, it's a problem. Well, okay. How about somebody come out and say everybody's all in agreement? Hey, everybody's got the right to protest. Everybody should be able to protest. I just don't like how they do it. Well, how in the hell should we do it? Because we've been trying for 500 years and we still can't find a way that's appeasable that will make people stick to what it should be about. And that's the most difficult part of watching this go down and watching Colin Kaepernick's actual message become farther and farther from what the talking points are. Maybe, maybe it would be a great help for Colin Kaepernick himself to come back out and speak and maybe hold a press conference or give a media availability 5, 6, 7 minutes. Maybe he have a prepared statement, take a few questions, because he's getting whitewashed, and I don't want that to happen to him. I want him to be able to be the central figure that he's been for this cause. And
I just missed it. That I'm the son of an MLK pallbearer. I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. I attended North Carolina A&T State University. Matter of fact, we just honored one of the grandsons of the Greensboro Four as the National Defensive Player of the Week. So, what racial tension is in this city? I've grown up around it all my life, but to see could possibly be next door with a Twitter account and just spewing such ridiculous rhetoric. A person who's considered a hero in my town, John Eastner, called Colin Kaepernick's stance pathetic. In Greensboro, just around the block from where I live now. Privileged community, privileged high school. That he played tennis against come from the black community. To not understand being a Greensboro resident, for him to not even identify with what's going on, and he being a resident of Greensboro, North Carolina, it just sickens me. It's sad. It's really, 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 really sad.
Right. And the
Because
less informed you are, I think that the less informed you are, the media isn't helping because again, like I said before, the media is out here framing it very wrongly. And so if you just go off of 90% of your news outlets and your media sources, you're getting misinformation. Shep Smith from Fox News was
Oh
one
yeah.
of the few people who was like, "Oh, hold on, let me stop you right there. They're not protesting the flag or the anthem. This is not what this is about. We're losing the focus. The focus is on police brutality, oppression, and injustice." And this is like one of the forerunners on Fox News. So when, one of these people can actually take a step back and refer to it in the right way on that particular channel, is no need. It should be very easy for every other local news outlet and major news outlet to just state the facts. If you just state the facts and say, hey, they're not protesting the anthem, they're not protesting the flag, they're protesting the right things, the inequalities and things, I think it will soften because, like I said before, the ideals of the flag and all the stuff that's wrapped up in the patriotism of the flag is a hot button issue for people. And if you're misinformed and you think that that's what the people are, taking their action against, then, you know, there's going to be that negativity. But everybody in the country at some point or some point or some other has been done wrong. It may not been by the opposite race, but it could be by a friend, a family member, a stranger. But you feel that, hey, I've been done wrong. Something needs to be done. Somebody needs to stand up for me. I need to speak for myself to bring attention to the fact that this ain't right. And I don't understand why they can't collectively say, hey, you've been treating black people wrong in this country for so long. How about we stand back and just listen to them just for once? You know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate that we have to have people like Buck Showalter come out and say what he said during the Freddie Gray trial for people to perk up and maybe listen, or Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr or Stan Van Gundy. You know, people who, you know, they're allies and we're thankful for them. But hey, you go right to the source. Right here, we've been right here the whole time. You don't have to overlook us for the quote unquote white man to say it. And now, okay, now it's the law. What I'm saying? It's the Dave Chappelle skit, when he's sitting on the toilet and he's got the magazine open and he's like, police have been beating up black folks like hotcakes. My word. Like it's so shocking to him, you know what I'm saying? Because he's
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Because it's just, you know, like the young lady and like a lot of people who died in Charlottesville, and people have said, hey, if you you know what I'm saying, if you are not if you're not, I don't, for her direct quote is, and I can't, and I don't want to butcher it, but if you're not paying attention, if you're not concerned, you know what I'm saying? And it's just a weird time right now in just a country where, things that are supposed to bring us together, which are our sports and which are our teams and our rivalries and our dislike for the Cowboys or the Redskins or the Steelers or the Ravens or the Browns or whatever, supposed to be our one thing that says, hey, these 3 hours we can get together and we can all root and cheer for the same common cause. And for a few hours, we on the same team. And now with Trump's words and his actions, he's even taken that away from the country. So
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just to elaborate on a little uh between uh the NFL and, let's say, basketball. NBA has been active uh protesting police brutality. Yeah, you could say they were actually at the forefront even before Colin Kaepernick took his knee.
and we have to also remember the NBA has more experience with this because they had to go through the,
Mm-hmm.
Abdul Rauf
Mahmoud.
Mahmoud situation back in
Mm-hmm.
the, early 90s, where he did thing similar to what Colin Kaepernick is doing, where he refused to stand for the flag and, as a protest to the way that black people were being treated. And, they instituted a rule where you have to stand. And so when they instituted the rule, he complied, but he just turned his back.
Mm-hmm. Or sat in the locker room, or
Right,
he raised his hands and prayed
right,
as a converted Muslim.
right,
And eventually he was blackballed. And I had someone come in my mentions try to break down all of the stats and stuff to say that he played. Well, there's more than one ways you can cut a person out of your plans. So he was on from a playoff team, then immediately shipped out to Sacramento. You know, playing time decreased year after year until he was eventually out of the league and eventually had to go play overseas until he ended his career for a while until he came back uh, for the big three, and he's actually speaking again. He's speaking up again, showing his support for Colin. And it's just interesting that the NBA, with its players that have been known to take stands. I mean, we had Craig Hodges uh, winning the championship with the Bulls and showing up in a dashiki with a list of things for George Bush to discuss about issues going on in the community in the black community out of the league next year. Um, I believe that there are several players that sacrifice to speak up in their communities and have been ostracized. It's going to take people like LeBron's of the world, the Kevin Durant's, the superstars who have an immense value in their communities and have their message carried out by the community, by the media. The Players Tribune, now that that's run by the media, there's a platform there to have things to be said. Uh, Ways now that players have become more empowered. One of the positives that I can reflect on as this happened. Again, I'm not with the whole NFL being unified. This is big. It's like, no, it's not to me. because they're not unified. That want to express themselves and were denied that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's just binding together. That's just binding together to please. Even in
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Jones's statement afterwards, why not? Why take a certain stance when you know that 60% of the people are going to be upset with you? Maybe it's
Well,
not about that. Maybe it's not about that 60%, but it's about the 40% who feel marginalized.
mm-hmm.
Could be, could be wrong, but I think there's some support there.
Well, as many people know and many people have said, it's not supposed to be comfortable. It's not supposed to be something that makes you feel good when people protest. It's supposed to make you feel uneasy. It's supposed to make you reflect and think, hey, am I doing right by this particular group of people who feel marginalized? It's supposed to create some shame in you. And I think that that's what a majority of the people who promote this. Oh, it's against the flag. Oh, it's against the military. Oh, it's just disrespectful. I think that is kind of their buffer from feeling that, from feeling that guilt, from feeling that um, empathy for Black people. Instead of going that route, they say, "Oh, you guys are being disrespectful. Oh, you guys aren't showing, the proper deference to all the people who have, come before you and died and sacrificed and blah 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 blah." And that's just their buffer from the real issue, which is, hey, y'all not treating us right, and y'all know y'all aren't treating us right, and we've been struggling trying to figure out many different ways for hundreds of years for us to get a little bit better treatment.
All right. Um, there's one more issue that we need to briefly touch on. Off the presses, literally today, uh, the NCAA has completed an investigation leading into um, basketball. Uh, for, four assistant coaches were arrested, including uh, Chuck Person, former NBA player, now an assistant coach at his alma mater at Auburn. Um, Oklahoma State's Lamont Evans, Arizona Emmanuel Richardson from the University of Arizona, and Tony Bland from Southern Cal. Coaches are charged with bribery, conspiracy, solicitation of bribes, honor services, fraud, conspiracy, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and travel act conspiracy. And each of these coaches face a maximum sentence of 80 years in prison. Just were released on bail with arraignment in 2 weeks in New York. Basically, it's wild. Um, just
Don't
it's a
forget
result of
the global marketing director of Adidas is also
Adidas.
involved.
Yes, yes. James Gatto. Yeah, huge. Gatto's a big player in the 30 for 30 in the Sonny Vaccaro's 30 for 30. Basically, he was Sonny's one of Sonny's guys. Um, this hit home for me because another Adidas employee, Merle Code, I know him personally. So Hall of Fame. He's a on A&T. Uh, I was very very sad to hear this today. Another man I know very well, Rashawn McKell, custom clothier in Atlanta. some well known names in the AAU community as well uh, that were picked up today, and I'm on the fence with this. Uh, I'm just this is actually a result of a person who turned over federal evidence as he was accused of stealing $2.5 million from five clients by the Securities Exchange Commission, Lonnie Blazer, and he was the cooperating witness in this investigation. Uh, Basically, he was investing money and moving clients is to moving money into movies and entertainment adventures, including funding cash to several recruits and their families. Of Wow, there haven't been any player names mentioned, but Louisville has confirmed that it's being investigated. Possibly the University of Miami is being investigated as well. So this has far-reaching indications with the Atlantic Coast Conference, at college sports itself.
It's a whole bunch of Nike
Uh,
schools that are on high alert
yeah,
right now.
high alert. Um, but the law, and you're being caught up because somebody got caught, a byproduct of that training.
Mm-hmm.
We know that college basketball is there's mega money in college basketball, and I just think that the players need to be have they need to have a part of it. I just think this is another case of what these folks will do to try to get the best players. I don't even believe in the spirit of amateurism in big time college sports anymore. Never believed it,
But
even when I was a member. I was a member of an NCAA institution athletic program. I just never believed in the spirit of it. I think that
it's
there's a lot going on.
it's kind of two different things going on. It's the one thing of the Adidas, Mr. Gatto getting kids paying off families to go to these certain Adidas schools to wear their products and things like that. So that's like one part of the investigation. Then there's a second part, which is the actual coaches receiving money to steer these potential, one and done players or certain NBA talented players to a certain agent or a certain financial advisor, and then they're getting kickbacks from those agents and advisors for
Right.
delivering these players. So it's kind of two different fronts that they went after here, um, which is a weird thing because a lot of coaches, if people don't understand, these kids trust these coaches. If
They do.
if a coach
They have
says
no
if a,
choice.
right, and it's kind of a blind faith. If a coach, if the guy who recruited you and got you to come to school and help you get to where you go, say, hey, I'm gonna turn pro. I have, this is my advice. This is the guy you need to represent you. This is the guy you need to kind of look after your money. This is the guy you need to do. More than likely, the player is just gonna take that advice and run with it and show that loyalty. So it's these coaches are just taking advantage of the trust and the vulnerability and the naivete of these athletes who are trusting them to advise them and guide them towards getting into the professional ranks, and it's just unfortunate that it has to come out this way, and so many um programs are going to be affected by it. I mean, this is one of those things where you know college basketball could be forever changed in how everything works, depending on if, like, let's say a year from now or 6 months from now, a whole bunch of high profile Nike schools get caught doing the same thing, because it's just not these 10 schools that are pulling this scam. If those 10 schools know about it, then there's probably 210 schools that know about it. So
which goes back to the famous Larry Shapiro line: all the kids I was after.
mm-hmm,
Shapiro is the whistleblower that got the University of Miami in probation
mm-hmm,
with players agents. He said,
mm-hmm.
"I didn't get every kid we recruited." So other schools were, totally implicating that other schools were in on it too. And I think that this could be, like you said, this could be the start of something really, really, really big. And it
And
just goes to show you that the losers in all of this.
right, right,
I
and
mean, look at what happened to look what happened to the Fab Five. Their memory is forever tarnished,
mm-hmm,
and it's unfortunate. As much money as those schools made off the as Michigan made off the Fab Five, and now not only that, but the Fab Five can't even be recognized anymore.
right.
You know, uh, uh, it's sad.
Well, hopefully at this point, this will maybe open up the ability for the process of them to just say, hey, the best way to end corruption in this sport is to figure out some type of stipend, some type of payment, some type
Mm-hmm.
of,
Yep.
something. I mean, if kids are smart, I think it's up to 65 or $70 when they go on the road for per diem. Most of those kids go eat Taco Bell because they stay in really nice hotels. So a lot of those places have, like, breakfast and a couple of meals provided. So they go somewhere, eat really cheap, or they all get together and eat, and everybody chip in $10 for what they get, and then they just put the rest of the money in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yep.
can have some type of cash in hand, and not have to call their mom or do something outside of the bylaws of what the NCAA allows. So there's always been a workaround, for the kids not having cash. They just need to go ahead and just open it up and say, hey, these two sports make all the money. These two
Mm-hmm.
sports deserve a bulk of it. And if there's any left over, we'll try to figure out how to give it to baseball and women's sports and all this stuff too.
Well,
But
there's plenty of money that handed out there. There are schools profiting, or if they're not profiting, 10K in the red and a booster just cuts them a check. Operating the budget is not an issue. They offer the sports. Big time programs offer the sports,
mm-hmm,
and they can live off of the revenue sharing from the TV bowl games.
right.
So I think it's very possible. I think that there's a stipend available. And let's add another thing. Allow the student athletes, and I use the term in quotes, to be able to cash in on their likenesses,
Mm,
to advertise, even if they can't collect the money until they exhaust their eligibility. Put it in
mm-hmm,
escrow, put it in a savings account,
mm-hmm,
but allow them the opportunity
mm-hmm.
to do that. Because quite honestly, those kids are promoting the university in
We're
a
at a
positive light.
we're at a time. I know next year that ACC network is starting.
Mm-hmm.
SEC network's been up and running for a few years. Pac-12's got their own network. That's where the money should come from, right there, because that's
Mm-hmm.
billions of dollars involved in TV contracts to show these kids. in all the sports because you get the ACC network. They're not just showing basketball and football; they're showing volleyball and women's soccer and fencing and all types of things. You know what I'm saying? It's just not the major money making sports that are there that are the contents for these various networks that have been popping up in the last decade for these conferences. And even if they didn't want to quote unquote take the money from the athletic budget, the ACC or SEC or whatever could take 10% of this big money they getting off ESPN and say, "Hey, here's the payment. Here's the money for all the sports right here."
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that would eliminate some of the corruption and things like that. I know one thing, Louisville is about to be in trouble if it comes out
Yeah.
that that they were really a part of this, and apparently they were kind of the main cog in a lot of what's going on here. um it's gonna be hard for Rick Pitino
This
to
could
to
really,
get past this one.
yeah. This is just, you know, we can criticize the NCAA, not necessarily NCAA, but the feds actually getting involved in this more surprising to me than anything. Usually, the NCAA polices their own. The feds already had a way in, so they didn't even go to the NCAA to investigate this. They
Right,
actually did it themselves,
right.
and you know that's big. That is actually really, really big because that shines a light on investigations and what they don't uncover.
And it also probably lets me lead to believe that they just starting. They're not giving the NCAA a heads up on who's doing what. So you know what I'm saying. I think like we just said earlier, this might just be the beginning. This might just be the first little pull back of the band-aid to revealing a whole bunch of other things going on. Because um, the famous Michigan Wolverine, North Carolina Tar Heel, Maktar Njai, seemed to make his way around a whole bunch of Nike schools during his time in college. And it seems to be a coincidence of, why you would do that, But at the time, it's just like, hey, he's going to go from Michigan to North Carolina. Good for North Carolina.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, and not to mention, you know, the apparel, the sneaker companies and things. At first, when I first heard about it, I thought it was maybe the coaches selling the product, secondhand, because you are allotted, so many pairs of shoes and so many windsuits and blah 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 blah, and then you get to reorder them again, like halfway through the season, you get to like
Mm-hmm.
reorder up again. And I thought maybe the
Yep.
coaches were kind of taking advantage of that and doing a thing on the black market. That would have been probably the least of their their worries considering what was uncovered.
What's crazy is I know I know that happens. I do because I see some folks wearing exclusive windsuits that I know exclusively the coaches. So yeah, um, probably some throwaways or the old one piece of fabric rip, turn it in and get a new one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
A lot of tricks of the trade there. But
Right.
but the thing overall is that I think that this is really um you can be disappointed in your people, but at the same time, worth all of this just to get that particular kid. And a lot of people and a lot of coaches will say yeah, it's worth it because that kid can actually make that school a lot of money,
Hmm.
especially in basketball because you only got 15 kids to a team.
Right.
and you play 9. So if he's one of your 9 to the champ, if you get all the way to an NCAA championship, or even into the take home bonuses increase and your share of the revenue increases per round in the NCAA tournament, you know, that little risk that you may take, you're gonna get it back.
Right.
Not to
Right.
mention if the kid goes pro.
Right.
Uh
Right.
and, medium risk and usually high reward. So there's gonna be a question of morality, obviously, in this. But I think a lot of people will bat their eyes at it. Just just tripped up in the game somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna take
They,
a I'm not gonna take a massive moral stance on this. I don't think I need to because I think the NCAA is a racket personally. It's in one of my personal top 5 rackets along with IRS and insurance and all the other
straight profit, homie. Straight profit.
straight profit, straight cash. Word to Randy Moss, straight cash on me. But yeah, I just it's something that's going to be talked about, and then you're going to see the think pieces coming soon on the NCAA. We're going to talk about paying the players again, but
Mm-hmm.
before all of that, just men that just happen to be caught up in the game of it all.
And what's unfortunate is there's so many different ways that if they really wanted to, that they could generate the revenue to pay these players too. Because a lot of these colleges now are trying to, get alcohol sold. And I know that in the ACC, they have a rule where they actually start ACC games for basketball an hour and a half early, just so people have the opportunity to come in and drink. Because once the tip-off start, they stop the alcohol sales in the actual arena. If you're in a suite or a private area, you have to keep your alcohol confined inside of there. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
general public, once the tip off starts, they cut the alcohol sales. So a lot of schools are trying to get that to at least go until halftime, you know, because it's profit for them.
Let's
And
talk about
and
football. Norfolk State and HBCU sells beer. Unheard of. Unheard of. They do it this year. Unreal. I would
right.
that sent shockwaves through the HBCU community because that's
But
a resource that even though we've always had print advertising, we've always had we've let them buy ads. Actually, sell beer at an arena was shocking. Or at a football game. On top of that, but yeah, that's huge. That's a
mm-hmm,
huge source of revenue.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, don't ever let them fool you and say, oh, it's too difficult to figure out a system. No, the only thing that's difficult to figure out is once you get past football and basketball and maybe baseball, how much do you pay all the other sports underneath those people? That's the
Mm-hmm.
difficult part. That's the part where
Yep.
everybody, because you can't split it up evenly because nobody else makes money. That's the whole point of
Mm.
basketball and football in major college sports is they're the only two quote unquote revenue drawn sports. Like all the other sports that are on college campuses usually operate on half year scholarships where you pay for half of the year out of your pocket and then your scholarship covers the other half. The only
Or you're on academic scholarship
or
for
you're on
half.
right, right. So basketball and football are only two sports that provide you with a full quote unquote ride as far as, hey, you're here, everything's taken care of. Your family just has to pony up enough money for your books and to get you back home during breaks, basically, and food. And a lot of times, during the seasons, the food is catered for the players. They, nutritionists and all that stuff, so they, can keep an eye on what you're eating and putting in your body. So they have a lot of advantages, to making it happen. They just need to stop trying to hoard all the money for themselves and give it back.
Yep. Well, That's going to conclude this special edition of Know the Score. I'm your co-host, Tyler Ball. You can always contact me on Twitter at TABALL1. My co-host is Don Delarente. You can find him at Don Delarente. Don't forget to check out our shows on the CSPN. Don Delarente himself, in addition to this show, also hosts the Rasslecast. Oh my goodness, we've got so many new shows. It's hard to remember them all. Ratchet Ramblings, Crown and Collards, Riding and Rolling. Our other co-host, Tobias Wilborn, is in season 2 of Beer It Is. But just what you need to do is just go to iTunes. You can download the CSPN. Download that, and then you can access every show that's on the network. Touch, download, and all the shows you have will download on the CSPN. So, for the crew, Jesse and Tobias Wilborn, off temporarily back here on Friday, and now you know the score.